and thank you for joining us on this Mother's Day edition of the Minister's Press Briefing. We are coming to you live from the Ministry of Finance, where this afternoon, the Honorable Minister responsible for Finance will be addressing, through you, the good people of this country on a number of issues. I want to start by quickly introducing, acknowledging the presence of a number of persons who are here with us. We have with us directors and officials of the Ministry of Finance. We have with us one of the Honorable Deputy Ministers designate for Finance, the Honorable John Kuma, Member of Parliament for Issu. We have with us the Honorable Abena Asare, Member of Parliament for Tiwa East, also a Deputy Minister for Finance designate. We have with us Professor Dan Bafo, who is an advisor to the Ministry responsible for Finance. And we will be addressed by the Honorable Minister responsible for Finance, the Honorable Ken Ofori Attah. Honorable Minister will make some remarks, and then with the allotted time we have subsequently, we will take questions from you, and I will serve as moderator for it. Honorable Minister.
So thank you indeed. Thank you very, very much for this. Good afternoon and welcome to our Ministry of Finance. Today marks, unfortunately, the 20th anniversary of the 9th May Accra Sports Stadium disaster, and if we could please observe a minute of silence for them. May the souls of the departed rest in perfect peace, and may the families left behind remain comforted in the Lord. Thank you for welcoming us to your homes this Sunday, the motherly day of all days, to discuss building our nation. I also like to take this opportunity to thank the many, many Ghanaians who prayed and stood in the gap for me for God's miraculous healing during my post-COVID multi-scheme inflammatory symptom that occurred. We do thank you and give the glory to God for this. Today is the first of many updates and dialogues on progress on key government programs and bread and butter concerns of Ghanaians. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to engage with you personally. Over the past few weeks, I've been following the healthy conversations that started following the hashtag Fix the Country, a social media campaign primarily initiated by the youth. I actually have met the representative of the conveners to understand and explore collective solutions over what the conveners describe as, I quote, a failure on the part of successive governments to improve the lives of Ghanaians. And this is true, as you know. We've had some 17 IMF programs. The last one we exited not quite too long ago, and the president promised never again. I acknowledge that these are challenging times for many of us, and we, like almost all the countries in the world, are living through the worst economic crisis since 1918, the Spanish flu, and certainly since the Great Depression. Africa may potentially lose a decade of its economic growth because of the intervention of the pandemic. A time that has put a great burden on the necessities of lives and livelihoods never before seen in our recent history. Unfortunately, these external shocks have heightened Ghana's perennial problems, which we are committed to address as an administration. In extraordinary times, you should expect exceptional leadership from your administration, government. I truly believe we cannot ensure exceptional leadership without a collective effort from all of us. So I commend the youth for calling on government and leaders to be at their best. This shows the patriotism of Ghanaian youth, echoing the President's call to be a citizen and not a spectator. You have elected us to solve the problems that face this country. We will continue to work with you and other stakeholders to do just that. Until we were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, we were on course to achieving the objectives to stabilize and grow the economy, create jobs, especially for the youth, modernize, digitize, and formalize the economy, to ensure social mobility for all, with education, skills, and access to capital, providing social protection for the vulnerable, and create a safe and secure environment for citizens and businesses to thrive. As government, we took the following measures, among others, to address the structural challenges of the economy. We implemented flagship initiatives such as 1D, 1F, One Village, One Dam, Planting for Food and Jobs, and IPEP in the real sector to accelerate economic activities and help create jobs. We introduced restored or enhanced social protection policies to support restored or enhanced social protection policies to support the vulnerable and address the pertinent issues of joblessness. These interventions include the free senior high school program with over 1.2 million enrollments, the Zongo Development Fund program, school feeding program now of over 3.4 million beneficiaries, the LEAP program, Livelihood Empowerment Program, with over 334,000 households, Nation Builders Corps with 100,000 beneficiaries, allowances for teachers, trainees for some 47,000 beneficiaries, allowances for nursing trainees with some 50,825 beneficiaries. Fortunately, we've been able to preserve jobs in the public sector in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. We acknowledge that as a nation, we need to do more to ensure decent incomes for all Ghanaians. However, even at these levels, compensation of public sector employees represents 52.4% of our domestic revenue. We implemented several digitization programs to transform the economy, formalize the informal sector, and increase efficiency in public service delivery. These initiatives include the issuance of over 15 million national ID cards, the digital addressing system for over 7 million homes, mobile money payment interoperability system, the introduction of the paperless port system, automation of driver's license and vehicle registration, renewal of NHIS registration, land records digitization with blockchain technology, and automation of passport application. For the first time in Ghana's history, we established 2 social partnership programs, one of organized labor and the Ghana Employers Association, the other of faith-based organizations, to provide a platform for a cohesive and trustful relationship between the partners on issues of national development. We took a financial sector on the brink with much courage, cleaned it to build a more robust financial ecosystem that is well capitalized, liquid, and solvent to fund our development. By this initiative, we saved the hard-earned savings of 4.6 million depositors, 81,700 investors, and protected 3,000 direct jobs. We won the bid as a country to host the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, positioning Ghana and Ghanaian businesses as a gateway partner and spearhead Ghana as a hub for the Africa region. In addition to Google setting up its Regional Artificial Intelligence Center in Accra, Twitter recently announced that it will put its Africa headquarters in Accra. In addition, GIPC is working assiduously to attract the likes of Amazon to Ghana to deepen the tech entrepreneurial ecosystem for Ghanaian entrepreneurs and to capture the future. After 4 years of implementing these prudent measures, the Ghanaian economy witnessed a turnaround. Between 2017 and 2019, The economy grew by 7% on average in response to government's prudent management of the economy and implementation of the flagship programs, being one of the highest and sustained growth periods in our history. As a result, you saw single-digit inflation of 7.9%, reduced fiscal deficits with 3 consecutive years of primary surpluses, relatively stable exchange rate, significant improvement in the current account with 3 successive years of trade surpluses, strong foreign exchange reserve buffers covering 4 months of import cover, and relatively low and sustained interest rates of about 13%. As a result of the prudent measures, the economy continued to remain resilient in 2020, even at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time in our 64 years of nationhood, a Ghanaian government had to tackle a severe health crisis and its attendant economic crisis. The outbreak and the ensuing partial lockdown to contain the spread of the virus and protect lives brought socioeconomic activities to a virtual halt, and that was also globally, with the resultant loss of jobs, incomes, the collapse of businesses, and loss of government revenue. The decisive and, I must say, unparalleled measures we took to protect Ghanaians have come at a cost, as seen in the sudden relapse in the debt situation from 62.4% in 2019 to 76.1% in 2020. However, taking a similar sudden rise in debt burdens of countries around the world over the same period may be indicative of the time we live in and where we are coming from. South Africa moved from 62.2% in 2019 to 82.6% in 2020, Rwanda from 50.7% in 2019 to 61.6% in 2020, Zambia 91.9% in 2019 to 119.97% in 2020, and the UK from 85.4% in 2019 to 100.9% in 2020. From the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020, President Akufo Addo laid out the 5 key objectives government sought to achieve. 1, to limit and stop the importation of the virus. 2, contain its spread. 3, provide adequate care for the sick. 4, limit the impact of the virus on socio-economic life. And 5, inspire the expansion of our domestic capability and deepen our self-reliance. The President made it an utmost priority to protect Ghanaian lives above all else. This is captured in his now world-famous quotation, "We know what to do to bring our economy back to life. What we do not know how to do is to bring people back to life." On the fiscal front, the impact of the pandemic led to a downward revision of revenues by 13.4 billion, 3.5% of GDP, and expenditures by additional 11.8 billion, 3.1% of GDP, with a combined fiscal impact of 25.2 billion, 6.5% of GDP. As a result of the President's quick and decisive leadership, the government came through for its citizens, responded swiftly and strongly, even as tax collections were drying up. As a result, government spent about 8.134 billion, about 8.1% of expenditures, and 15.1% of domestic revenues to preserve livelihoods. The government provided 1.8 million and 917,000 cooked food packs to vulnerable and underprivileged persons within Accra and Kumasi during the lockdown period. In addition, in partnership with faith-based organizations, government also distributed dry food packages to about 470,000 families during the period of the partial lockdown in Greater Accra and Greater Kumasi. The government fully covered the consumption of electricity for over 1 million Lifeline customers and subsidized 50% of the consumption of all other customers for that period. Over 10 million fellow Ghanaians benefited from free water supplied by Ghana Water Company Limited between April to December. As a result, the average monthly water supply of 9.24 million cubic meters, increased by 43.21% to reach 13.23 million cubic meters. Further, 474 small towns and 1,100 rural communities benefited from the Community Water and Sanitation Agency. Under the Operation Return Home program, the government assisted over 10,000 Ghanaians whose circumstances had been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic to return home. The government launched and operationalized the 750 million Coronavirus Alleviation Program Business Support Scheme, CAP-BUS, which mitigated the impact of the pandemic on several micro, small, and medium-term enterprises. At the end of April 2021, about 412 million cedis have been dispersed to support 277,000 businesses, 69% being female-owned. The scheme has saved over 650,000 jobs in the micro, small, and medium enterprises sector. The Bank of Ghana also strongly supported with a reduction in monetary policy rates by 150 basis points, reduction of capital adequacy ratio by 150 basis points, and reduction of primary reserve requirements by 200 basis points, among others, to ensure that there was credit to support larger businesses. In doing so, government ensured that the worst possible impact of the pandemic was averted. However, let me stress that to ensure a complete recovery, we need to invest more in the organizational capital of Ghanaian businesses going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also fixing this rising debt burden on Ghana. The debt stock as of end December 2020 stood at a nominal figure of 291 billion, representing 76.1% of GDP, compared to 218 billion, equivalent to 62.4% of GDP in 2019. The total public debt has increased from 122 billion, 56.9% of GDP in 2016 to the current 292 billion, 76.1% of GDP at the end of December 2020. Included in the debt stock and the debt to GDP ratio at the end of 2020 are the following non-recurrent burdens that we had to deal with as a matter of urgency. A fiscal impact of COVID-19 of 25.2 billion, cost of financial sector cleanup of 21 billion, cost of excess capacity charges paid to IPPs of 12 billion, the impact of the reduction in growth from an average of 7% to 0.4% in 2020. If these expenditures are excluded and the drop in GDP growth in 2020 primarily attributable to COVID-19 pandemic is taken into account, the total stock of debt for 2020 would have been approximately 239 billion, implying a debt to GDP ratio of 58.7%, which is way below the ECOWAS threshold of 70%. To put things in perspective, between 2004 and 2008, Ghana's debt stock increased by 30%. Between 2008 and 2012, the debt stock increased by 269%. Between 2012 and 2016, the increase in the debt stock was 243%. Between 2016 and 2020, the increase in the debt stock was 137%. This includes the cost of the banking sector cleanup, excess capacity charges, and the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We have financed during this period the construction of ongoing interchanges across the country, including those at Takoradi, Tamale, Tema, Obechebi-Lamte, and Pokwase, to ease traffic and enhance productivity. Never in our history have we seen such activity of interchanges to ease traffic. Despite the impact of the pandemic, the rate of growth, let me not forget our investment in railways that is also going on in the Western Railway line to be able to move our resources more effectively. Despite the impact of the pandemic, the rate of growth of the public debt has been lower under our government than under previous administrations. The rate of debt growth was lower despite massive investment in our flagship programs such as Free SHS, Planting for Food and Jobs, NAPCO, One District, One Factory, One Ambulance, One Constituency, One Village, One Dam, restoration of teacher and nursing training allowances, among others, while maintaining relative macroeconomic and exchange rate stability. Notwithstanding, as President Ofori Attah said on February 21st, 2017, and I quote, "I was not elected by the overwhelming majority of the Ghanaian people to complain or compare. I was elected to get things done. I was elected to fix what is broken, and my government and I are determined to do just that." We commit to working with fellow Ghanaians to do just that. Ladies and gentlemen, in the coming days, we will move swiftly to address some of the issues that the hashtag Fix the Economy have raised. First, I'm working with the Minister for Water and Sanitation to immediately ensure potable water to areas of critical need. Second, I'm working with the Ministers of Road and Highways and Transport and Interior to address congestion along the major highways. Third, we are fast-tracking the implementation of the 200 million Jobs and Skills Program and Economic Transformation Program to enhance job creation significantly. This intervention is designed to facilitate new and expanded private sector businesses to employ more people. This, we believe, is a more sustainable way to rebuild this economy instead of expanding government employment schemes. Fourth, starting this month, we are rolling out over 8 additional interventions under the Ghana Cares Obatampa program. These will be in the health, agriculture, tourism, trade, digitization, science and technology, housing, and financial services. Fifth, by the end of July, we'll have a new development bank capitalized at over $500 million that will provide long-term wholesale financing, not retail as happened in the past, to the private sector through commercial banks and non-bank financial institutions such as venture capital companies for SMEs to ensure financing to support the youth. The good people of Ghana have given us a mandate to get things done. For us as a government, this is a clarion call for a national conversation on the shared burden to renew the social contract of our democracy. At its minimum, we should ensure social justice and social mobility for all Ghanaians. At our best, we should open for all Ghanaians an economic system under which each citizen shall be guaranteed the opportunity to show the best in him or her. As I always have said, I will commit to working to fix those structures that will set Ghana on this path to a righteous economy that ensures open access and property ownership for all. Ladies and gentlemen, before I end, permit me to take this opportunity to wish our mothers, wives, sisters a happy Mother's Day. Out of their daily toils, we can face each other to fix our challenges in building this nation. God bless our mothers abundantly. So let us rise up and build together, as in Nehemiah 2:18. Let us fix this together and save lives for our country. Thank you, and God bless us all.
Honourable Minister, grateful for your presentation. I was making a few notes, and you can correct me if I got you correctly. You've done about 5 things. You've been reminding us about what we collectively did in the last 4 years to fix this economy. Then you've also been reminding us about the real impact of COVID-19 on the transformation agenda. You've been talking about government's acknowledgement that we need to do more. And if I got the number of initiatives right, you have just reiterated about 5 major structural efforts that government has already commenced in fixing this economy. And finally, you are calling what is going on a healthy conversation. And if I heard you well, you are introducing your own hashtag. Is that what, fix this together?
That's correct.
Honorable Minister, I want to invite our colleagues in the media who have questions at this point to file. Colleagues, I'll take not more than 3 rounds of questions. So if you give me a waiver, I'll take your questions now, and then I will have an opportunity to come back. Daniel, I see your hand. I see another hand here. Are there any more? Then there's a call. There's a lady, of course. We're always, in support of affirmative action. Yes, it's Mother's Day. So I'll start with the lady. I'll start with the lady, and then I'll come to Daniel, and then I'll come to you. And then there was another hand somewhere at the back here. No, I think there was a 4th I picked already in the first batch. 1, 2, 3. Then that'll be 4. So, madam, I'll send the microphone to you. Please introduce yourself and let's hear your question.
Good afternoon. My name is Nana Oye Ankra. I work at Asasi Radio. There is a pandemic, which means that our policies have to be reshaped. And the minister mentioned that they are fast-tracking, or you are fast-tracking the implementation of the 200 million jobs and skills program to enhance job creation significantly. And he said this intervention is designed to facilitate new and expanded private sector businesses. I have also monitored the campaign on social media. One of the questions the people are asking is, what is government doing to create jobs for the people? They want to see government jobs. They want to see government companies. Now there's a success story. For some time now, you don't get to buy a coffee. You want a coffee to buy. You don't get some on the market. So we want to know what exactly, apart from working with private sector, what government is doing to create more jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Daniel. Yeah, Daniel, switch on the microphone and then let's hear you.
Right. Okay. Mr. Minister, I heard the Information Minister say when he was summarizing your speech that these are things that were already in motion. I'm seeing some specific interventions here that were named by the Fix the Country protesters, and I want to know if this is in direct response to them, or we should go by the Information Minister's words that these were things that were already in the pipeline. Also, this is a very wide-reaching protest, and I'm referring to it because you did for a number of occasions in your speech. They've called for structural change. They've asked for a change in paradigm. They've asked for a change of the way we think about our economy. Is it your view that the interventions you mentioned adequately address the concerns that have been raised by the protesters?
Thank you, Mr. Dazi. And just to be clear, I was saying that what I heard him do was to reiterate some things. So just to put it in context. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and then let's hear.
Thank you very much. My name is Klefe Kufu. I write for the Ghanaian Times. Minister, I would want to find out what you are doing or what government is doing to get Ghanaians to rally around the call for sharing the burden. What campaign has been put in place to ensure that Ghanaians rally around the call you are making? The second question is, in your estimation, how much will it cost the country if government decided that for this particular year we were going to fix all our broken down roads? How much is it going to cost the country? And then my last question is on the 101 hospitals. I didn't hear you say anything on the 101 hospitals. The initial 88 and then stepped up to 101. I didn't hear anything.
So what's the status of Agenda 111? All right. Yes, so let me take yours as the final, and then we'll respond and come for a second batch.
I'm Freight Dalanyo Megashi with GH1 Television. Considering our current debt stock being more than 75% of GDP, would you describe our economic status as highly indebted? And what does government have to show to all Ghanaians as proof that the over 170 billion cedis in borrowed funds were prudently used for viable national investments to justify the introduction of what some have described as killer taxes in collectively shouldering the burden? And again, as we look to rebuild the economy by raising taxes, can you tell us how much you lost to the both PDS arrangements, and have we paid money as a state to procure the vaccines needed to achieve the herd immunity, even as we look to economic recovery? And if we have, how much have we paid, and how many doses are coming in? Thank you very much.
So, Minister, let me just recap. Oye is asking, what do we say to the call that we want government jobs? How do we reconcile that with this whole question of private sector jobs, etc.? And she went into an example of a confi, etc. And she relates that to a hint you gave in your presentation about fast-tracking the $200 million jobs program. Are those government jobs or those are private sector jobs? That it appears more people are interested in government jobs as against private sector jobs. Daniel is asking for clarity. Are these initiatives you are talking about new initiatives in response to the broad-based calls out there, or they are, as I suggested earlier, a reiteration of government existent programs, which may suggest that, what, did you see this incoming or etc.? There's a second question he has about whether or not this list you've given us adequately addresses the various concerns that have come. How much confidence do you have that what you already have in your brown bag adequately addresses the concerns of the Ghanaian today? Ghanaian Times has about 3 questions. How are we, because you talked of shared burden, and let's fix this together. He's asking, how are we mobilizing to rally around the entire country for everybody to realize their role in this shared burden so that we can do this? Or is it just something we are just saying and then we'll go to bed? And then he asks a specific question about roads. If he said we are fixing all the roads now, how much would it cost? What would it mean for the broader economic activity? And by the way, Agenda 111 was the latest. And then GH1, 75% plus of GDP, would you describe us as highly indebted? And what do we have to say or to show that the borrowing in times past was prudently used? And so it is now time for us to share the burden and all contribute some more. And then finally, he's asking, have we paid money for any vaccines? And if so, do we have any numbers to share? Minister, we're in your hands.
Great. Thank you very much indeed for these questions. I think Oye's question really, in a sense, gets to the heart of this, that this is not a government that is working in reflex. The $200 million programs for economic transformation and jobs and skills started planning this some 2-3 years ago with the World Bank, and finally coming to fruition now. So certainly is a government that has always had a clarity on the plan that we have for the nation, and we can see the strength of the economy 2017 to 2020, an ability because of the robustness to be able to handle 2020, and a continuum with the Obatampa program with projects like these which were already pre-thought of to go on. And so I think at this point in time, you talk about a CUMFI, but there's some 181 companies well on the road with regards to 1D, 1F that we continue to encourage to support. These are all, I mean, I think we gave some numbers for government compensation, wages, etc. on the public sector. And I think we are stretched to the seams. And really, for us, as a right-to-center government, it's always been an issue of strengthening the private sector for them to create that access to jobs and funds to do that. Then we had a question from Mr. Dadzi, which sort of dovetails into this. This certainly is not a reflex, but I actually took the chance to meet up with representatives of the group to appreciate, empathize, for them to realize that we are just not sitting back, and that we should also, as a nation, realize the impact of COVID-19 on all that we have been doing. We can't pretend that it has not occurred. We have to be clear on how we had to readjust our economic program to be able to save life first, because that really, in the end, the sanctity of life of any citizen cannot be compromised. And then it will bring certain burdens on us. But I think we all know that it is really global. So we need to get through that. We can't compromise, or that the president is quite clear about the protection of each citizen's life, and then at the same time pushing us for a growth agenda that we have to work together on to ensure that we bring back the type of growth that we had in the first 3.5 years of this government. So we'll continue with that without relenting. Ghanaian Times, I think in the end, the issue of sharing the burden is one in which we've had some very serious discussions with the Ministry of Information about really creating a national conversation on that, so that everybody has the true numbers, everybody understands the impact of COVID. I think even the group indicated that successive governments, have had issues, so that maybe we reorder, the way in which we engage as a country. I mean, we, for the first time in our history, have a social partnership with labor and employers that has never happened before, that we meet quarterly, make sure that we understand their needs, put them in the budget, and then also understanding that the faith-based organizations are in more places than even the government can be. And therefore, how do you integrate the sociology into our economy's progress and development? And they came in very strongly during the lockdown period, in which they went to the most vulnerable people to support the sharing of dry foods. But even in addition to that, we've gone further to look at their skills training programs, in which we've supported them to make sure that their congregants are also beginning to benefit from that. And that is us admitting that we may not be the best people as individuals in government, and there are smarter people out there. And how do you then understand our own sociology to bring everybody into this type of movement, which has to be shared? So the cost will continue to be high, given the nature of the pandemic. I keep saying that this is not a passing ship or frigate. It's going to be more than a 2, 3, 4 year issue that we have to deal with, and understand the nexus between health and finance and what it is doing, so that we can ensure that our people are protected. I think we've come up maybe with a figure north of $10 billion dollars or so, if we were to look at fixing every road around this country. So how do we balance all of that in a way, and be strategic in a way in which the most vexed areas are taken care of, and somehow we spread that. So that is going to be an administrative feat in terms of charging the ministry to do. But I think we have spent a lot more than most administrations have done on the road issue. On the issue of hospitals, which has come the Agenda 111, really I think it's an exciting intervention that is relevant and brings the whole issue of citizenship up for everyone. Yes, what we are doing is working with GIF to make sure that they participate in the development of these hospitals. And what we did was to segregate the equipment from the construction to make sure that the construction will be led by Ghanaian companies. I think they have received some 90 odd land sites from the districts, of which they validated maybe about 76. We still are maintaining the 15 million per each hospital on average, and they should, I guess, in short order, be able to begin to start. But we, as a ministry, has committed to depositing money with GIF, so that GIF can be the intermediary for this one. And we are looking at GIF as a way in which to do a lot more private and public partnerships, so that it will be more efficient and market driven. So both affordable housing, major roads such as the Tema motorway and hospitals. And once the development company is also in existence, they will be able to feed more resources to GIF to make it stronger. Ghana One has a lot of questions which I presume were written before my speech, and therefore in there really is an understanding and empathy of exactly what we have done with the debt, how it impacts. You know, I really am not very good about sensationalism if the facts are not there, because I think it's a very sensitive issue. I mean, you can create a heightened sense of a country which could hurt the nation. So for journalists and all, what we are trying to do is to put the facts out there. You know, now you understand why it is that the whole globe, you know, has gotten to a new normal in which these debt to equity ratios have just fallen off the scale. The question then is, how do we together understand the problem we have, how we all share the burden to be able to move forward, and where it is. So when you use things like pernicious taxes that have been brought, you know, where are we going as a nation, and what do we do? Do we want to borrow more, or do we want to find a way in which, with a debt to GDP, with a revenue to GDP of 14 or 15%, we need to move to 20%, and therefore, what is the input, you know, from all of us as citizens as to how to get to the 20%, to get another 30 billion to be able to move forward. You know, I mean, if we look at various periods, as I mentioned, there's been about 17 IMF programs, you know, because we have been not too transparent, or we've been disingenuous with the statistics, and create a sense of, you know, of governments that may not be doing what they have to do. But clearly, even if I was to look at each period, you know, from the 60s through now, I mean, I heard somebody talk about work and happiness and romanticizing that period. That period was a period in which we had over 9% debt to GDP. We had over 9% deficit. Growth had tanked below 3% or so. You know, so we need to be clear on where we are. We need to understand the setting in which we are in, and then we need to be able to have a government that listens, incorporates what you have, but really, in a Ghanaian sociology, to lead in the way in which we move forward. So I appreciate your questions, but things like killer taxes, etc., really foments, you know, a certain degree of crisis that is without contest. And so I think we need to look at that well. I think issues of PDS, etc., can be answered in another forum. Vacuums, vaccines, what have we were, of course, quite privileged to get the 650 from COVAS that we are doing. We are having to put some down payments for other vaccines that we are expected to do. And right now, there are about 1.2 billion doses that have been done universally. Africa has done about 20 million doses so far, and Ghana has done about 1 million. So we really are ensuring that we are protecting our lives and caring for that. Thank you.
Minister, thank you. I'll take a second batch. I'll take a second batch, and then I'll take a final batch. So I'll start with 1, 2. Echo, you haven't spoken, and there's a gentleman in the corner, 4. And then I'll take the rest in the final batch. Yes, sir, let's start with you.
All right, thank you. I have 2 questions actually. My name is Stena. Stena, I work with GH1 TV and Star FM. One thing is about one key concern that the folks on the campaign, the Fix the Country campaign, have is about low wages in the country. I just wanted to understand if the Finance Ministry can confirm if it's because employers are compensating workers unfairly, or we rather have a low output in the country, which is what is resulting in poor wages across the board. And then I know the government has continuously touted that you're working to make the country a rather global and vibrant economy, and which is why you are inviting a lot of foreign companies and global companies to set up shop here and then do business and then engage with the country. So I just wanted to understand what the arrangements are for ensuring equity so that folks in the country and employees in the country can benefit well from these opportunities that are coming in, so that it does not happen that these global institutions are taking advantage of the opportunities that exist within the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Honourable Minister. My name is Nana Poku from the Research Light. There's a general outcry that doing business at the port today is very expensive. And people are complaining bitterly, because I have a friend who said that he used to import a particular container for 13,000 Ghana. Now he's paying about 40,000 Ghana. What is accounting for that? And then
So the question is, what's accounting for the increase in port charges?
doing business at the port. I mean, duties and things have gone up.
Increase in freight charges.
Yes. And then I also want to find out from Minister, how much has accrued to the COVID fund, and what has been used for? Can you itemize it? Because Ghanaians want to know the account, how you are using the money for item by item basis, if it's possible to do that. Okay, then tell me, since people are refusing to understand the world order, the world economic order, what extra thing can you do? Because you explain to people, they still want to understand. They have made up their mind that the government is not doing well. But here's the case that's not coming from the government, but it's a whole world economic order. What extra thing can you do to appease the minds of people so that, the tension will come down?
Thank you. Echo, let me hear you. And then there was a hand we chose somewhere here. Yes, sir. You'll be the final. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Honorable, my name again is Echo from Bloomberg. You spoke about putting some money down for the purchase of vaccines. On the back of what has happened in India and the subsequent shortage of these vaccines, especially the COVAX or AstraZeneca ones, are you going to do some mini supplementary of a sort just so that we can do some procurement of vaccines? And the pharmaceutical, just in favor of vaccines, maybe like just a special what do you call it, provision that you put together,
So like
just so that.
Supplementary arrangement, not necessarily supplementary budget.
No. Yeah. Thanks for that correction. A supplementary arrangement in respect of purchasing of or procurement of vaccines. Also on vaccines, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association of Ghana have said they have approached the like of AstraZeneca towards the local manufacturing of COVID vaccines here. What they require is government guarantee, almost like to say, we'll buy it if you produce it. If they were to get that guarantee, they could go ahead and start the processes to locally manufacture COVID vaccines thereby saving us some cost. Are you going to give these guarantees?
Or are we in discussions with them in any way?
Yeah. And maybe in how far that is, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kester Kranchi. I write for the Daily Graphic. My first question is, the finance minister made mention of the fact that we need to... Yeah. He was saying that we need to invest more in the organizational capital of Ghanaian businesses to help the country recover from the shocks of COVID-19. I wanted to know what his ministry is going to do in that regard to help us invest more or do more to help in organizational capital of Ghanaian businesses. My second question is on COVID-19 vaccines. I was at the airport on Friday when the COVAX facility from Congo came to the country. And I spoke to the Chief Director of the Ministry of Health, Mr. Ken Ofori Attah. And he made mention that there is a difficulty on the part of government to procure vaccines. And that even though you have money, there is trouble in getting some of the vaccines to buy. And he said the COVAX facility that was coming into Congo was a timely intervention. And the government was very grateful for that. So I'm asking, we all know that this facility was diverted to Ghana because Congo couldn't utilize it. So if Congo had utilized it, was there any measure to ensure that the vaccination program continues without having any effect on those who are going to take the first shot? So these two questions. What are we doing to ensure that we raise organizational capital for Ghanaian businesses?
Understood.
Also say that
Understood.
that's the only way we can fully recover from it.
Understood. Minister, so the first question is on the subject of low wages. Are you saying that government is unfairly compensating, or you're saying that it is a product... Employers are unfairly compensating, or it's a product of, or it's an outcome of low productivity? Did I get your question correct? Yeah. And then what are we also doing to ensure that the foreign direct investments that are coming into the country are of benefit for the average Ghanaian, and that the average Ghanaian is not shortchanged? Correct? Okay. The next question is that there are reports of increases in freight charges. Can you tell us what may account for those? And it appears that some persons just don't want to understand what is going on in the world with COVID and its impact on economics and how governments are having to react. Do you have any other measures up your sleeves, especially when you are confronted with a situation where people just have made up their minds that they won't understand anything that you say? Is that your question, sir? Thank you. A call from Bloomberg is asking, knowing the shortage of supply from India, do you have any supplementary measures to shore up the portion of vaccines that we are purchasing? And are you in discussions with the pharmaceutical group in Ghana? And if so, what is your position on this talk of giving them a government guarantee so that they can produce vaccines here? And then the very final one, if you can elaborate on any specifics for what you call, quote, investing in organizational capital. Chief, correct? And then, apart from that, do you have any measures to ensure that the vaccination program can go on? Because it appears that if we didn't get the 350 diverted from Congo, it would have been hot. Correct? Minister, where are your hands?
Yeah, we would... on the issue of the vaccines, you know, the amazing thing about leadership is that you then find a lot of people wanting to join in the success. Okay, so yes, suddenly Congo realized that they didn't have, quote unquote, the organizational capacity to be able to administer these doses that they had, 1 million of them, within the time of expiration. And Ghana, of course, has proven to. You know, so there are, 50-something odd countries in Africa, and we were able to negotiate to get, 35% of that 1 million, you know. So I am confident that, unfortunately, a lot of countries do not have the capacity to administer, and we should be able to benefit from that. I think the reality is there, and I think we all know the story as to what you called vaccine nationalism, or however you want to call it, in which India, for example, cannot think of exporting with the type of crisis that they have. I think the developed countries already pre-ordered and paid for, 90% of the production, so that is skewed. So COVAX was really sort of the intervention that you needed. But beyond that reality is our own bilateral discussions with a number of countries whom we know have stocks. And therefore, we expect that we should be able to get what we require at the appropriate time to make sure that our vaccine program is not dislocated. So it's going to be a continual fight to understand who has the vaccines. There was a call from the U.S. State Department last week to Foreign Affairs in which, the suggestions as to what they need to share, Ghana will be on top of the list. And that is what leadership does for you. You get confidence from those who have it, also wanting to be associated with success. And those are incalculable effects that the country now has. But going back to the issue of low wages and productivity, I mean, that is just a problem. I already outlined to you the extent to which public sector takes from our revenue, which also leads to how the private sector responds to wages. But the whole issue of the fight for digitalization and skills is also meant to increase productivity, which will then help for you to be able to afford to pay more decent wages, as we put it in our language. And I think we just need to continue to really introduce technology for that. On the issue of protecting Ghanaians from foreign company abuse, I think that's really an issue of administrative vigilance. And we all, coming back to the issue of organizational capital, strengthening our SMEs and captains of industry so that they can stand to negotiate properly in ownership, so we don't wake up in 10, 20 years with everything owned by foreigners without our people at the helm of that. And that has to be deliberate, and we understanding, as the Asians did, of sometimes picking winners back in certain areas of our sectors that we should dominate. And I think we are going to be quite deliberate about that. It's important for us. Research Light, I mean, I think you raise a very important point, is that are we going to continue to put, our heads in the sand, pretending we don't know what is going on in the world, and then heightening, a sense of disorderliness which might not be, but really how do we engage this new normal? And what is it that we do to create an environment in which ideas can be integrated for us to go on, and not some political adventuring if somebody wants to do that, but really what does the youth want to do? I mean, speaking of them, clearly they are as patriotic as us, wanting to see a stronger republic. And the question then is, how do we integrate, their ideas to make sure that we move forward? Is it only by demonstration? Maybe not. Is it by convening a national conversation? Maybe that's more positive. Do they fully know what we are trying to do through the development bank to support non-bank financial institutions. Maybe we need to be more forthcoming about that so that they then become the evangelist of a hopeful future. And I think that was really the spirit in which we met with them to see, because in every decade and the series of IMF programs, you can see the challenges, but you can truly also see the departure in these past 3 years with regards to macro. And without building on the macro, access to capital becomes a problem, openness of the society becomes a problem. And when you see the Googles and the Twitters coming into being, you are beginning to broaden a space in which people can sit from their bedrooms and do businesses, without thinking of government as an alternative. But I think the point you raise is important. How do we put resources through the Ministry of Information for a very robust dialogue to be had as to how to approach this post-COVID period and make sure that the demographics of the youth are taken care of. And for me, it's important, just critical, that we do that, because that's really the future for us. So thank you very much for that question. I was speaking to Gassem maybe a week or two ago as the issue of cement prices and iron rods came up, and they had begun to pay, instead of $45 a ton for freight, had moved to $65 a ton, partly because of the global supply chain, in which China is now trying to move as much coal to themselves as possible, and therefore sequestering a lot of freight moving vehicles. So the COVID response is also having some imported costs that we need to find a way. And the issue then of whether we can support organizational capital to strengthen our companies to be able to do these PPEs locally, etc., becomes really significant, including vaccines themselves, which a committee was set up by the president to look into manufacturing of vaccines, etc. Yeah. I don't know what is left. Bloomberg, the shortages in India. The question now becomes really bilateral discussions with the various places of storage, the U.S., France, Canada, etc., to see how we can, outside of COVAX, be able to do that. But also on the Africa platform, which was set up by AU, we have signed up for that, for 12 million doses of J&J, and looking to put a down payment down for that, working with the private sector for that. So the vaccine area, AfriExim is very interested in supporting countries to build up, and as I mentioned, actually the President set up a committee to look exactly at how we can ensure that we can do this on our own. So I don't know whether, Kester, we've done yours, and you're happy with where we are, organizational capital, strengthening that. The CARES program is and then in terms of guaranteeing to buy the product, I mean, I'm not sure that COVID is going anywhere soon, and it will be in our interest to protect these lives, and we'll continue with that commitment. The CARES program, if you read it well, includes a guarantee fund. It includes a development bank. It includes strengthening of MBSSI to support MSSME companies, and also for the banks to be able to further support 1D, 1F programs, coupled with the skills and jobs project and economic transformation project, then puts it in an ecosystem of support. And these are not reflexes. These are all, thought through things that have been announced. And really, when one sits together to put it all together, you see an ecosystem of forethought and progress to really say that we are not here for sort of whimsical responses to things, but a planned agenda to move from public sector control as we diminish that to private sector. And these are some of the things that have already been in the pipeline.
Minister, thank you. We're going to take a very final batch of questions, and then when we are done, we will wrap up. The ladies, I'm not having a lot of questions from you. Now would be a good time to exercise affirmative action in this final batch of questions. Latif, I'll come to you, don't worry. I'll take you as part of the final, but I want to give some priority to the ladies. You are representing all the ladies, eh? On behalf of the ladies. So Latif, and then the two ladies here, I'll come to you. No, but Latif, I'll take you first, and then I'll come to the two ladies. Are there any others? There's a final one I'll take, or this will be it?
Hello.
The two of you are from the same organization. Give your question to him. Don't worry, I'll come to you. Latif, go.
Yeah, so I was doing some reading in the Global Finance magazine yesterday. They came out with a publication on world's most indebted government. And that was where I found out that our debt to GDP now stood at, as of 2020, stood at 76.66% or so. In that same report, the IMF estimate, and I'd like to quote this, that an increase of just 1% of GDP in highly quality public investment in both advanced economies and emerging markets could raise productivity by 2.7%. That is in the private investment by 10% and creates between 20 to 33 million jobs. Minister, my question is, from the Global Finance magazine, just 1% increase in GDP. Yes, global GDP. Yeah. So I want to domesticate it. I want to domesticate the question. I want to find out whether, from where you sit, Minister, in Ghana here, do you see us contributing significantly to that 1% growth in global GDP? And if you do the maths, how many Ghanaians would you estimate to get well-paid job out of that 33 million job that the Global Finance magazine estimates that would be created if this investment is really to be carried through? And my colleague earlier asked a question about our indebtedness. Now the GDP, the level of GDP to debt to GDP ratio stand at 76.66%. At what level would you not describe it to be sensationalism if people like us ask the question whether or not we are a highly indebted economy? Thank you.
Right. I know there's an ongoing discussion, or there are negotiations on a possible increment of wages. Can we know where we are with that negotiation? Are there proposals on percentages already? I would also want to find out, people keep referring to our energy sector debts when they are talking about the fact that government doesn't have money. What are the steps to address that particular problem?
My name is... It works, right? Yeah, my name is Sarah Paco, Media General. When the minister was speaking, he said there were some interventions being put in place to ensure that some of the concerns being raised by the Fix the Country hashtag is addressed. I want to find out, is he acknowledging that some of the concerns they are raising are factual? If there are, healthy. Can he specifically tell us those that he thinks are healthy, those that he thinks are exaggerated and should be ignored? He also mentioned that some allowances of nursing trainees and exactly. So I was saying that would he acknowledge that some of the concerns they are raising are truth? Where the can he mention specific ones? Yes. We want to find out the nurses who demonstrated last week. Were they part of the nursing training allowances that were being cleared for them to be absorbed? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Minister, I came for the second time because whilst you were answering our questions, I got a message from someone in Takrady on point 18, and you said that we have financed the construction of 7 ongoing interchanges across the country, including those at Takrady, Tamale, Tema, Obechebelamte, and Pokwase. This person is asking where the Takrady interchange is because he has not seen that project begin yet. Also, have you put a cost to the first and second interventions that you listed, working with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to ensure potable water access? Which urban areas? How much is it costing? Ministry of Roads and Highways to address congestion along major highways. I ask this also because very recently there was a meeting on road accidents, and the cost item that was put there, if my memory serves me well, was 4 billion to dualize the 6 major highways. Accra Kumasi alone was 350 million. Are we looking at that? And I remember you mentioned that construction of all our roads will be about 10 billion. So he didn't give a currency. So it's dollars. Thank you. Yeah. So which roads are we looking at immediately? Why are we picking those roads? How much are they costing?
Thank you. Minister, the Global Finance magazine has made some calculations. The question is whether you have any perspectives on those. I think he was specific how he wanted it, if you have any perspectives. There's a question about status of wage negotiations, energy sector debt, if you want to mention some of the ones you describe as healthy. Then there's a question about the nurses, and whether or not there's costing for some of the interventions. I think Daniel listed them, and the Takrady interchange that you mentioned that financing is being provided for. I think there's a question that it is not there on the ground, but you are mentioning financing being provided for. So maybe if you want to connect the two. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we are doing well with these discussions. I think really the challenge for us as a nation is sort of realization of where we are in this period, comparing ourselves sometimes with our African neighbors to see what we have tried to do, but really focusing on, as a president would like to focus on the realities of the impact on our people and how we are able to get input to move the country forward. I think fundamental to what the whole issue is about is the statement of the failure on the part of various administrations to improve the lives of our citizenry. And then to put it into context, what this administration has been able to do these 3 years, the reality of COVID, what it means, and therefore how do we recalibrate to make sure there is hope and a sense of purpose in the way that we move forward. I will need to do some analysis on the global finance issue But for us, with Obatampa, we've been very clear on our objectives with regards to creating jobs over this 3-year period and addressing some structural inequities that would really help increase jobs, especially in the private sector. Now, whether it is sensationalism for you to talk about a 76.2 for us percent debt to GDP ratio, it really is an issue of putting it in context. You know, how did that happen? Which I think if you read my submission, you understand that. And how are we going to work that down? And really, is there a new normal in the world with regards to, you know, debt to GDP ratio? And are we unique in what has occurred to us? So if that's the new reality, what is it that we are doing to make sure, as you can see in the Obatampa program, to tailor down to below 70% over that period is what it is. Now, how you want to be able to then address that to your listeners will show an informed, you know, and mature way of doing that. But certainly, we have to keep our eyes on it. But if you can see what we did with regards to the COVID period, what we did with regards to the banking issue, what we are having to do with regards to electricity and then infrastructure, I guess you can now decompose and be able to understand why we are where we are. But even with the rate of growth that we showed you, it was also significant. And what are we going to do as a nation to tailor it down? I think would be the informed way of not sensationalizing, but acknowledging that that's where we are and what we do going forward. It's very difficult to talk about a tripartite negotiations when we're in the middle of negotiations. But as we mentioned, we've gone through a good period of a good relationship with them. So the technical committees are now, you know, meeting, and they'll be presenting their report this week, and so we will know how to move forward. I think the nurses who demonstrated were really the issue of the failure in the final exams and had to rewrite their referrals or something. So they've now completed and want to be employed because we have employed the other colleagues who finished earlier. So we are working with MOH to address the issues. But I think it comes, you know, I mean, as an issue of why a journalist will not find out why they were demonstrating. And the issue for us is also understanding whether there's sometimes a sense of entitlement we as a nation should be able to halt and not to necessarily believe that everybody, you know, is right when they make a decision. And I think that would have been the first question, not to me, but to the people who demonstrated. Because if you have not passed your final exam, what is the way to do it? And how should we approach with empathy, but firmly, that you haven't passed a certain hurdle to be able to be employed, you know? But that is being worked on, and we'll see what we can do about that.
There was a question about, you mentioned that financing will be provided for some projects, including...
Okay. Yeah, we have, in terms of financing for that, I mean, there are real projects that we've provided financing for, and therefore once you do that, it falls into your debt to GDP ratios and all of that. But truly, at the end of the day, when we look at what we are going to be putting in infrastructure, including Agenda 111, Tema Motorway, and at least the 4 identifiable interchanges, you realize that the debt is being applied, you know, in a way that they should be applied. I think Sarah went on. I mean, I did meet with them, you know, so it's not an attempt to put one's head in the sand, but to acknowledge that there are difficulties that our people are facing, either with jobs, either of low wages, either of some roads that have not been built, etc. But how do you put that in context, therefore, with the impact of COVID, with what has been done before, the commitment that went into the launch of the Ghana Cares program in terms of forward-looking, and how do we create also a sense of burden sharing so that we can, as a nation, rise up and build together. The cost, if you look at capital expenditure, which has not occurred for years, it's just incredible, and that therefore will require you know, a really medium to long term to address, you know, all of those issues. But in the meantime, do you create an enabling environment for the Googles and Twitters, etc., to come into your country so that youth unemployment will be abated? So there are the short-term issues that we have to take care of, medium and long-term, and confidence that we have been able to do it before. We have a plan going forward. If we all speak the same language and rise to the occasion, we as Ghana, you know, I strongly believe the Black Star will continue to shine as a place of destination for most investors and for the pride of the continent. So I'm confident about the future. I'm confident about what we have started in terms of segueing with the Obatampa Ghana Cares program, and really the issue of narrative and dialogue and conversation, I think would continue to keep us in a leadership position. So I really sincerely thank you for being here. And let's begin a new narrative of discussions, of understanding the global picture, of putting our feet to the fire, of we having that type of empathy and understanding, incorporating your ideas, and moving forward as one nation. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, thank you. Colleagues, it's 3:30 p.m. I think this is what time will allow us to do this afternoon. Honourable Minister, we want to thank you for your time and for responding to the issues that have come up this afternoon. The Deputy Ministers designate, advisors to the Ministry, directors here at the Ministry, colleagues in the industry, want to thank you also for the airtime. Many of you have carried us live this afternoon, and I imagine we'll take time to, like you say, dissect the conversation tomorrow morning on your platforms. We are very grateful for your time. Wish you all the best.